This is an FIE Composer 2.0 help video. The main topic is cubes, and this specific video is about the cube piece. So we're just going to open up Composer here. And what I've got loaded in here is something very simple, just to show you sort of the extent to which you can sort of use and abuse the cube piece. What I've done is I've just constructed a small chair out of 3 cube pieces, and if you take a look at the pieces, you see I've got it named seat 1, back 1, and stem 1, and then I've just got a headlight in here so we can see. Ideally, Composer is not really supposed to be used to sort of create very complex and detailed set pieces. Rather, it's supposed to sort of give you broad dimensions and boxes in place to give you sort of perspective lines of where objects should be. And ideally, if you really need a detailed object in there, you would use Composer to capture an image, and then you'd sort of draw, using the box as a guideline for perspective lines, you draw the more specific object in there. But to the extent that maybe you do need a chair, and you don't think a chair is asking too much, you can build simple pieces like this, and really you don't even need the stem on the bottom, you probably just need the back and the seat. But this is just to show you, sort of the extent to which you can sort of abuse the cube piece to sort of build some complex things. Ideally, a chair like this would be saved off in a scene file, and you'd sort of import it and merge it into scenes as a pre-built asset or chair, as opposed to building it from scratch every time. So with that, I'm just going to create a new scene here, clear this out. And then I'm just going to add a cube piece to the scene. And now I'm also going to add a headlight so we can see. And just show you the ways in which we can work with this piece. So we're going to add the cube piece to the working set, select it, and just look at its manipulations. There are basically 2. There's the SRT and the tumble. And they're both very similar on this piece, so we're going to start with the SRT for a bit. The SRT uses what's referred to as an orthographic view, which is to say there's no perspective to it. Right now we're looking from the top, and if you just hit the little view button down here, you'll get a window that helps you sort of manipulate the view or the orthographic view. So right now we're looking from the top, and with a single finger I can just drag around the space, and I can also zoom in and out with a pinch. Okay? And I can grab the handle, the SRT handle, and move the cube around in space. And I can even grab the rotation handle and rotate it around as if it were spinning on a pole that we're pointing straight down into the scene. But I can also use this view window to change to a different view. Well, right now we're in the top, and I can instead flip to the side just by hitting the side button. Okay, and as a result, we start to look at this thing differently. From the side, we're just looking again head-on from the side, and we can see if I pull the SRT around in this space, I'm actually pulling it around in a different plane. And then I can flip around to the front using the front button, and I can look at it from this plane. So I can pretty well sort of balance this cube on its edge and go back to the side view. And if I want to kick it up on its corner, I can just rotate it and then place it, go back to the front view, and see that I've pretty well kicked it up on its corner. And this is a pretty good way to sort of to lay things out, to do blocking of your objects in the scene. The second row of buttons, I have center on view and center on origin. We'll just pull this thing over to the side here to show you the difference. If I click on center view on origin, which is on the right, the view gets recentered back to 0, 0, 0. But since my object is off to the side, it's not really ideal. So I also can choose center view on SRT, and wherever this object is, the view is going to go find it and center on it. So if it's way off in some weird place, you can just use this button to go find it. The third row of buttons is for zooming. And the middle one reads equals 1.0. And if you click it, you end up in a sort of a predefined scale where basically from top to bottom is 2 meters. One from the center to the top is 1 meter, and from the center to the bottom is 1 meter. You can also always use the out 10x and in 10x buttons to sort of change the scale, in large orders of magnitude. if you need to. And of course, you can always just pinch your way into wherever you want to go. And if you feel like you've gotten lost, maybe it's super small and off to the side, and you have no idea where anything is, you can always center view on SRT, and then equals 1.0 for the zoom, and you know where you're going to end up. You're going to end up, centered on your object with, sort of 2 meters worth of view. And then depending on how big your object is, maybe you want to, always go out 10x from that. But it's a good way to sort of set an absolute view and find your object when you're completely lost. Okay, that's really all there is to the SRT. If we go to the tumble manipulation, you'll find it's very similar. It's just that we have a camera here with which we can sort of free tumble and rotate around. And it does have a perspective. But if you grab the SRT, you do still move in the plane of the camera. It's just that you can sort of tumble around freely and sort of find where you are. Some people will prefer this for sort of moving stuff around in gross space. And likewise, the rotation just always acts as if there's a pole going directly into the screen and the object rotates around that pole. So you can line things up pretty effectively in here. Some people prefer it. Again, one finger or one click drag does your tumble, and 2 will do a pinch, will do a zoom in and out. And generally tries to stray straightened up on the SRT. We'll just go back into the SRT and talk about this other button here. We have the transform window, which if we click it, brings up our transform. The transform window is a good way to put in exact measurements and to also deform your cube into rectangular solids. So if we just go from top to bottom here, we have the position X, Y, and Z, which you can drag on, and then you see it moves left and right. The Y, which is up and down, and Z, which is in and out, which you can't see in this mode because orthographically we're in the wrong view. But if I flip around to, say, the side, then you'll see it is actually moving. And that's just a property of orthographic views, that one axis is always turned straight in, and therefore you don't see anything if you move it that way. If you double click on any of these fields, you can do a type in. So if I want to zero this out, or give nice round numbers, let's say I want it to be at 0, 1, 0, which would basically be 1 meter off the ground exactly. I can type those values in just by double tapping and then typing the number in. The orientation values below are for rotation. And so it rotates the object around the given axis, and you can drag it. These are done in local space to get around a weird mathematical thing called a gimbal lock, which NASA had some problem with a number of years ago, which makes it very intuitive in that it's always going to be rotating on an axis of the box. But the unintuitive part is that sometimes when you rotate on one of these axes, all 3 numbers will change, which is technically accurate for a gimbal locked object, or for coming up with gimbaled numbers for a local rotation. The rotation feels more natural this way, and it is in fact a component of Euler angles that is unintuitive. So we've sort of taken the unintuitiveness out with regard to how you click and drag. That being said, you can always double click on these ordinal values and type them in which case they will act like Euler values 0, 0, 0. They will get you back where you need to go, as long as you don't accidentally move them a little bit. And you can reset your rotation relatively easy. Now the last 3 things here are scale X, Y, and Z. Scale is almost always in meters, and it's a 1 meter box. When it reads 111, it's in that dimension. But by changing these values, you can pull the box into other shapes, and you can do so very accurately. So if you have a tabletop that is supposed to be 1.5 meters by 1.5 meters, you can just double tap these things in here and get a very accurate tabletop. And then if you need to if you know how high it's supposed to be off the floor, let's say it's supposed to be 0.8 meters off the floor, you can type that in as well, and be fair and be very sort of confident in the fact that you have a tabletop that is the right size and is in the right place. for making very accurate shots within this environment. You have multiple counters. You create multiple cubes and place them in the right place, and you can basically model technically accurately model the very specific pieces that you need to do in order to figure out where your camera should be. Okay. You can add as many cubes as you want. You can rename them, and again, you can use them to make simple things like backdrops, or more complex things like tables and chairs. Or they can stand in for a car. You can make it car-sized, and it can stand in the background and just provide you perspective lines for drawing in a car into your storyboard. Pretty much anything you come up with for rectangular solid will do a good enough job of figuring out where it is and how big it is. The cube is your friend. Okay. So that's really it as far as cubes go. And that concludes this video.